In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of men can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense, and today it still is common sense.
I'm April Girusso.
I'm Mark Zaccaria. This is Common Sense. Welcome back. This week's show could easily be dedicated to one story. There is that much to say about the much heralded release of the House budget proposal. In fact, it appears that with one short detour to decry a routine instance of Ocean State corruption, we have pretty much done just that. So, if you're interested in exercising some of the devils from the details of the piñata known as the annual Rhode Island budget proposal, you've come to the right place. On the other hand, if you're really more interested in a recap of the National Guard Air Show, it's time to change channels. That's because we are about to try to apply some common sense to the camouflaged details and misdirection of the Ocean State's fiscal 17 budget. We will be hearing from State Representative Patricia Morgan. This week, she will be conducting an in-depth interview with Mike Collins, founder of the Gaspee Business Network. Together, they will delve into the details of that startup business roundtable. In between segments of that deep dive, April and I will reappear to ask, answer, and then ask our favorite question over again. Are you kidding me? As usual, Portsmouth's Jeff Richard will bring us home with his ruminations on lobsters. So buckle your seatbelts. It's budget time in Little Rhodey, so you can expect the ride to be a little rough. April?
Raimondo's flat fee plan to help traditional school districts control the costs they pay for charter schools is out. The governor had proposed helping school districts by giving out a flat fee of $355 in state support per student who attends charter school over public school. But lawmakers briefed by House leadership have denied the proposal. So instead, districts would have a choice. They could either keep 7% of local tuition dollars that would otherwise go to charters, or they could add up all of the unique costs borne by districts alone and withhold those dollars from charters. So I guess either way, the plan is just to take money from charter schools. And they're not happy. Those schools are saying that the new formula would devastate and potentially cost the mayoral schools $4 million during the first year of implementation. And what's more, Governor Raimondo's camp claims they were never consulted on this 180-degree change in her proposal. As reported by Kathy Gregg in Projo, charter leaders say the House Finance proposal would create budgeting chaos because charters would not be able to figure out how much money they were getting from the districts from year to year. The proposal also has the potential of hurting regular districts who have already developed their fiscal 2017 budgets based on getting $355 per student back from charters. In other words, no one is happy with the plan designed by the committee. Okay, that's not exactly true. You can be sure that Bob Walsh and the NEARI are pleased with this outcome. You can bet Mr. Walsh had plenty of input. This House provision protects the privileged position Walsh crafted over the years for his rank and file. So here it comes again, folks. Once you start digging into the depths of the budget proposal, you find plenty to make the special interests smile. As usual, those golden nuggets for the NEA are provided at the expense of an educational program that was growing precisely because it worked so well. Or, to put it another way, the benefits to the children of Rhode Island were ignored so that the stream of benefits to the politically connected could continue unabated. Have I missed something here? Mark?
No, April. I'd say that just about sums it up. Nor was that the only problem with the budget process. Last week, House Finance Committee reported out its amended version of the state budget for FY17. Speaker Mattiello may have been looking for plaudits for getting this year's budget document out to the full House in the first half of June, as he did last year too. It's true, under previous speakers, the final budget has in fact taken until mid-July before it's been completed. But the state constitution stipulates that the budget must be passed before the start of its covered year. So Mr. Mattiello looks good, only by comparison. In fact, this year's big reveal of the Ocean State budget struck the same nerve it did last year. The House Budget Committee received the final copy of the proposed budget just minutes after the last deal it contained was struck. And that was just minutes before the committee was called to vote approval of the inch-and-a-half thick $9 billion document. Projo reports that House spokesperson Larry Berman, sniffed that members of the Finance Committee had been working intimately with all but the last few thorny details of the spending plan for weeks. Well and good, Larry, but what about the rest of us? Neither the press, the good government organizations, nor any concerned citizens get the chance to pour through the new budget before it is a done deal. It's true that there is a 7-day waiting period mandated by law before the full House can pass on the work of their Finance Committee. It is also true, though, that as a practical matter, the budget approved last week cannot be modified after House deliberations. It must be either approved or disapproved. Given the pressure to conclude this session and release the incumbents to hit the campaign trail, can anyone make a good guess as to which of those options will be selected? So once again, we have to pass the bill to see what's in it. Okay, if Speaker Mattiello thinks he deserves props for advancing the Finance Committee process 3 weeks, how about he advances it 1 more week so he can actually provide a service in return for the expected standing ovation? What if there were also a 7-day wait between posting the draft and moving on it in committee? Leadership has already shown they could manage the logistics of that schedule. What they haven't shown, though, is their ability to withstand the kind of scrutiny that would ensue, especially while the draft was technically still open to modification. Oh well, maybe someday, in a more perfect world. April?
Thanks, Mark. The RI Supreme Court officially reinstated the law license of a disgraced former senator. Ex-Senator Maselli represented Johnston in the Senate from 2006 until the day before he agreed to plead guilty to bank fraud in June 2010. He served 27 months in prison after admitting that he lied about his income and falsified bank records and tax forms to secure more than $1.7 million in loans. Maselli received a recommendation supporting his petition to reinstate his license by State Supreme Court Chief Disciplinary Counsel David D. Curtin. Curtin conducted an investigation and determined that Maselli met the necessary requirements. And what are those requirements, you might ask? Well, since he was officially disbarred in October 2011, he is just near the 5-year mark where he is eligible to request reinstatement. So he must demonstrate that he has the moral qualifications, competency, and learning in law to resume practice. He was originally admitted to the bar in 1999 and practiced law for 11 years without disciplinary infractions. You know, just a white-collar conviction of an elected official. No big. But so there he has the competency. He put the time in before he started serving time. Necessary learning, well, he went to law school, so there you go. Moral qualifications. That's where I'm getting a little hung up. What's hanging me up is not that he committed a crime, served his time, and is ready to get back to his profession. What's hanging me up is that he was an elected official, and though he didn't pilfer from the state, he did have a greater responsibility than the average Joe. He was even the chair of the Senate Committee on Rules. Come on, how perfect is that? So I hope he made a really passionate plea to the Supreme Court, and I want to know how a corrupt politician has the moral qualifications to be an agent of the law. Mark?
Well said, April. And that concludes this week's dissection of the news stories that have most affected Rhode Islanders. Before we move on to the first segment of State Rep Pat Morgan's interview this week, let's take a short time out. You see, I've actually seen the scripts this week, so I know we are about to be asked that most satiric of all common sense questions. Are you kidding me?
So the new $9 million budget was unveiled. Wait, pardon, billion? With a B. B as in boy. B as in Brady? Are you kidding me? That's right, it is the magical time of the year when the House Finance Committee votes on the next year's budget. And it took so much time to finalize all the little nuts and bolts that the budget didn't get voted on until 1:30 a.m., as in the morning. As in the next day. Sure, time is of the essence, but that seems a little shady. If you're going to wait until the next day, why not just take a break, convene when the sun comes back up? I'm just saying. The final vote had 14 in favor, with Republicans Patricia Morgan and Antonio Giarrusso voting against. So, quick review. Mattiello said that the budget has no new taxes. He also eliminated some fees that were proposed by Governor Raimondo, including an extra 25 cents on a pack of cigarettes. They're also rolling back the beach fees, and some other important stuff that actually has to do with the management of our state. The best part, though, is that the House is taking money away from the Commerce Corporation. You know, the ones who bombed big time on the marketing campaign, and will give between $1 and $2 million back to local tourism councils. Oh, and hey, they just hired a new marketing director to replace Betsy Wall. Interesting to see what that salary and severance package is going to be now. Mattiello says that the budget is pro-business, pro-jobs, pro-economy, and gives back to the people of Rhode Island. That sounds great. I'm still gagging a little bit on the $9 billion price tag, but I'm cheap. I guess $9 billion isn't much in the realm of state budgets. I guess I'm a Dr. Evil in an Austin Powers world. But for the littlest state in the union, we do have a higher budget than Delaware, Idaho, Iowa, Maine, Mississippi, Vermont, and both of the Dakotas. And the biggest state budget? Well, that of course goes to California with $247 billion. I think the number made me explode a little bit, like in my chest region. Don't you dare get any ideas for next year, Rhode Island. Are you kidding me?
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and I have with me today Mike Collins, who is the captain of the Gaspee Business Network, which is a brand new pro-business group.
Pro-business movement.
Right, pro-business movement.
Yep.
That we actually need very much in Rhode Island.
Yes, we do. Yep. After sitting at the State House for a little while during the toll debacle, I realized that there was absolutely no representation for business up there, and decided when it was all said and done that we'd put a group together. So I got together with some of my business guys and friends, and we formed the Gaspee Business Network.
Great.
And we've been on a roll since.
I know you have been. You know, one of the things that I think should be disturbing to all Rhode Islanders is we do have a series of chambers, but they've been actually pretty ineffective in advocating up at the State House. If you look at our business climate, we're bouncing along the bottom, so how's that working for you?
Well,
right?
you know, you take the Providence Chamber of Commerce, 1,069 members, all we heard was Providence Chamber approves roadworks, but they never even had the decency to call any of their members and ask them whether they were for it or against it. And, you know, there's big salaries coming out of that. It's, and I mean, some of the chambers, the smaller chambers, probably do a good job in the area, but the larger ones have lost their focus. And they're all bought and paid for, and it's like the old boys network. With this, we have no salaries coming out of here. No one gets paid. Every dollar goes to action and or advocacy, shall we say, and or education. And you know, our mission here is to make some changes at the State House and give the business people a voice back up there.
Well, and it is the policies at the State House that are affecting small businesses. I know that for me, during the toll debate, obviously, a lot of small businesses were reaching out, not just truckers,
Right.
but other small businesses who said, this is going to hurt our competitiveness.
Absolutely.
Right? They're competing not just within the state, they're competing with other states and sometimes completely around the country. And they knew that this was going to affect the cost of their supplies, their raw materials, as well as their finished products that they were sending out.
Oh, thoroughly agree with you. I mean, and I think the example you're leaning towards was one of the people from the turf farms that testified that they were so competitive that they were down to a nickel or 10 cents, I believe, a yard, and that this toll thing could make them totally non-competitive when they could sell their business
That's
out
right.
of state. So, you know, there's a Rhode Island-based business trying to do business in the state of Rhode Island, and yet it's going to get quagmired by tolls for short-term gain.
Yeah. You know, obviously, Job Lot was in this. They said it would hurt their competitiveness, their ability to give good prices to their customers, but also they try to buy a lot of things from internal or Rhode Island
Correct.
companies. And they said that this would affect that as well.
Well, sure. They're the largest, unbeknownst to all of us, I think we found out during the hearings, that they're the largest seller of pool chlorine, and pool supplies in the country. They're actually
That's
bigger than Walmart, and they do encourage to do businesses, Rhode Island businesses. I believe there's a company here in Pawtucket or East Providence that makes a lot of product for them that employs X
They're
amount
their
of
biggest customer, and it would really impact their ability to sell that product outside of Rhode Island.
You know, and it comes down to even more than this. It comes down to the financial devastation that this whole thing is going to cause. And this was the upsetting nature.
Well, it was that the businesses, the small businesses in particular, didn't have a voice that was advocating
Absolutely.
for them. You're right, the Providence Chamber was full steam ahead with the truck tolls, and yet so many of their members were saying no. They didn't have a voice there.
It was funny. I did another TV show, and it was, I ran into one of the owners for Benny's was there, and one of the Brombergs, and it was pretty interesting because Benny's is a 90-year-old company, a Rhode Island icon. Probably Providence Chamber is one of their oldest members, and no one ever had the decency to call up Benny's and ask them what their opinion was in
Right.
regards to roadworks. You know, so with that being said, there's such a disconnect from the legislature to the core roots of this state, which is the Rhode Island business. We're more worried about getting business from out of state. Why don't we take care of our own and flourish our own business? And that's what this is about.
And so you're going to give a voice to all of those businesses who don't feel that they're being properly represented by perhaps the Providence
Pat,
Chamber.
I want the person that does nails to the guy that bangs nails.
Yeah.
Right across the spectrum. I want everyone to have a voice, a phone number they can call and say, here's the problems we have. And we can advocate on it. When I walk into the State House or one of the representatives from Gatsby, I want them to know we're there.
Yeah.
And
And
they
a
will
good
pay
solid
attention.
advocate for them.
Absolutely,
Sure.
yes.
Unpaid advocate.
Unpaid.
I think that's nice for people to know as
Well,
well.
as we say, we're the uncorruptible voice. We can't be bought.
Well, it also lets them know that every dollar they give to you is going to be spent
Yes.
trying to further their opinions, their needs at the State House. There's just not enough of a voice for business in the State House. I can tell you from being there for 6 years that, you know, because we begin meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a lot of business folks won't run for the legislature. So the number of people in the legislature who have some connection with businesses, whether they run them or work in them, is very small, actually.
Yes, it
A lot
is.
of lawyers, you know, a lot of retirees from municipal and state service, but not a whole lot of business folks who understand what it takes to make a payroll and watch out for
Well,
the bottom line.
We call that having the lump in your throat. You know, and it's funny, most business guys will understand what I'm talking about. It's just some of the points you said. They have no comprehension of where the payroll money's coming from next Friday, or how we do this, or how we achieve that. And speaking at different variations of places throughout the state, you start to realize what a social disconnect there is once you start getting 25, 30 miles outside of Providence. And it's almost like the not in my backyard area until you start bringing home some facts. And then when people start looking at you, when you tell them the state's $18 billion in debt and there's $400 million a year pension, 4.9 billion in pension liabilities, 400 million in interest payments, people have severe tendency to stop paying attention to you. So with those little things, every business, I think the disconnect was they used to rely on their chambers. And now the chambers become social gathering spots, but there's no advocacy from the chambers. No one at the chamber wants to ruffle anyone's feathers.
Well, I think it's the ruffling the feathers, but I also look at their track record. They've been advocates for 50 years.
Correct.
How's that working out for you?
It's not very,
Yeah.
correct, not very well.
Right? How's that working for you? If they've been up there, like you say, big salaries, people up at the State House supposedly all the time, advocating for small businesses, and yet we have one of the worst business climates in the country.
Absolutely.
How effective have they been?
Not effective at all. I mean, you know, we're ranked 37th, I believe, in the country right now in regards to
Not
business
worse.
climate. And
It depends on what index
what
you're
scale,
looking
right,
at.
on what
We're
scale.
bouncing along the bottom.
what scale? But we are at the bottom from 2012, 2014. I believe we were the bottom. We were the metrics for the bottom. You could only go up from where we were, and that's a pretty sad. I hate to say sad state, but you know, businesses in Rhode Island usually, Pat, were generational. And you built a business because the next thing your kids were going to take over the business. And now you're seeing the children or that next generation leaving because the parents are struggling running their business. The profits aren't here anymore, and there's not enough to substantiate the
Yeah,
businesses.
it's become a very hostile business climate, or it has been for a period of time. I mean, I've heard the complaints. But listen, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back to
Thank
talk
you.
more about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now officially election time in Little Rhodey. The battle lines have been drawn. Forces are marshaling on both sides of one critical issue. The news media looks on in anticipation of analyzing the results once the rhetoric really starts to fly. So, what is the one issue which has so animated political wonks on Smith Hill and before and beyond? Why, beach fees, of course. Are you kidding me? Nope, no kidding. Beach fees. Speaker Mattiello, in rolling out a $9 billion FY17 budget, looked over all the details this massive document contained, and then led with beach fees. In his own inimitable way, he took personal credit for reducing the fiscal impact on ordinary Rhode Islanders by a full 50%. The fees in question, of course, are the parking fees charged to local residents at state parks and changing facilities from Misquamicut to Matunic to Colt State Park. On the floor of the House, Minority Leader Brian Newbury leapt to his feet in reply. Newbury pointed out that virtually the same majority members who had voted this pittance to the people were also involved in the 2011 budget. At that time, they moved to more than double all those same fees to bring then Governor Chafee's spending plan into what is jocularly referred to as balance. The righteous indignation of the right only served to keep the spotlight on this crumb being tossed to the rabble. As a result, no one is asking about the Superman building bailout that seems to be buried deep within the Rebuild Rhode Island program. Mum's the word on tens of millions in general obligation bonds. No attention is being paid to the expansion of entitlements that are mummified within the arid verbiage of this financial behemoth. The point now is simply to pass it and end the session. So the attention is being fixed on the one or two things ordinary voters can relate to as headlines. Was it ever thus? So, when is a beach fee not really a beach fee? When it's a Trojan horse for yet another armed assault on our treasury. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and I have with me today Mike Collins, who is the captain of the business network, the Gatsby Business Network, which is going to be an advocacy group for small businesses and
Right.
large businesses.
Absolutely,
Any business.
small to large. Right.
Any business, from, what did you say, from making the nails to pounding the nails.
From polishing the nails to pounding the nails. That's what
Okay.
we want, yep.
We were talking about the hostile business climate here in Rhode Island, and it has been hostile for a long time. And that's really demonstrated more to individuals in our jobs climate, right? Companies, all kinds of companies are the ones that supply the jobs. And when
Yeah.
you're squeezing them, the jobs go away.
Well, you have high workman's comp in the state. You have a very selective market in workman's comp because over the years, there's been so much workman's comp abuse, carriers chose not to come to Rhode Island and write here. So, Beacon Mutual is a quasi-Rhode Island state agency formed by the state for the protection of Rhode Island businesses. They do a very good job, but there's no competition to Beacon. And
There's no competition there. I've just heard so many complaints from businesses, and they don't want to stick their head up out of the foxhole, but they just say that every single ruling goes against businesses. It's
Yes.
just like they can always, if somebody decides they're going to, go to the workman's comp court, the businesses know they're going to lose, even if they can put forth a good argument.
Oh, yeah, the Department
that the person wasn't really injured on site.
Well, because it's the pro-labor attitude in the state, and it comes down to whether it's Department of Labor and Training, workman's comp, or whatever, you've lost before you even filed as a business owner.
You've lost before you filed,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I noticed this last year is we were looking at the Institute for Labor Studies and Research, which is a pro-union group, and one of their board members is the Chief Justice of the Workmen's Comp Court.
Wow.
Such a conflict of interest, and yet it goes on here in Rhode Island.
But on another note, we're giving them $500,000 a year to learn how to use that workman's comp
Yeah,
court, right?
we're telling people.
And telling people how
we're
to,
training people.
training people how to file charges against
Even
us. It's a beautiful
summer
thing.
interns. We are training summer
Yeah.
interns for the state how to file workman's comp claims.
It's funny because, you know, the abusiveness of power is real. You know, we're wasting our time with pine cones or leaves going on my driveway.
We're gonna
or-
fine you if you have your leaves fall in somebody else's
Or a 2-week
yard.
work schedule to businesses that would have been absolutely absurd, I believe by Rep. Tansey, okay, that would have just cost businesses an enormous amount of scheduling money. And it's very
Well,
clueless that
it-
there's no business experience there.
That was where you had to tell somebody 2 weeks ahead of time if their schedule was gonna
Right.
change. And in almost every business, from restaurants to manufacturers, schedules change. People get overtime, or they don't, or they just, it's so many changes.
The unpredictability in business, as everyone knows, you don't know who's coming in, who's calling out sick, especially nowadays. And, you know, it's little things like that. I have friends of mine that are in the restaurant business, and one of them was talking to me over the weekend, and you know, the 8% restaurant, that 1%, where is that money? All right, it got general fund.
It goes to the general
It
fund.
goes to
Well,
the general-
1% of it goes to municipalities and the rest goes to
Okay,
the general
but
fund.
the rest is general fund.
But, you know, the thing is, we're always looking to grab more and more money out of businesses.
When does it stop?
Right, even property taxes, the commercial rate is more,
Oh, is
much,
that-
much more than the residential rate. And it just goes on and on and on.
You know, contrary to what they might think up there, there's not a perpetual stream of wealth coming out of businesses. You know, we employ people, whether we manufacture or service industry, we need to derive profits. So profits keep us buying from each other, or allow us to buy from each other, and in return, businesses prosper and we create jobs. When you start feeing us and taxing us and insurancing us to death, we become unprofitable or marginally profit, and therefore we can't spend because it's not there to spend.
You can't buy the new machinery, you can't buy, you know, enlarge your plant, you can't put a salesperson on the payroll so that he can sell more product. You're stuck because the money is just going out the door.
You have very high utility bills up here, for example. So anybody in the manufacturing business would either try to invest into high efficient, low energy,
That's right.
low energy machines. That takes money. Where's the tax breaks for that? But yet, hey, I applaud the governor for the fact, okay, she got GE to come for 100 jobs, but it's overtime, and we gave $5 million. So we gave $50,000 a job.
Yeah.
$50,000 a seat.
You know, the taxpayers can't afford to pay for every job that
We're
comes
paying
into Rhode Island.
$50,000 a seat. That could have bought somebody a machine. That
Yeah.
could have put 3 people to work.
You know, well, perhaps we shouldn't go down that road, but we paid for 100 to come. How many did we lose?
Well, that's on the other aspect.
There's the other
you know.
aspect, but you're going to work on both sides.
I'm trying to work on both sides, and it's amazing. I have business people calling me daily. They want to join, and they want to make sure that their voice is heard. And it's funny because it sounds like a broken record. It's the same thing out of everybody. I've had enough. I love this state. I don't know if I can afford to stay here anymore. And that's pretty sorrowful. I was born and raised Rhode Islander, okay? Generational truckman, shall we
Yep,
say.
you're a
my dad-
truck owner. You're a
my
truck
tr-
company
I'm
owner.
a trucking company owner. And, you know, it's amazing because myself and my brother are partners. I have 2 young guys in my business that I brought in for successorship. And you know what? I hope they have a good run at Sunworth. But the business environment has to change for these guys to be able to survive.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do here is, whether it's through advocacy, through electioning, however it may be, we have to get a pro-business agenda back at the State House. And
Or just at least a neutral one that's not hostile.
absolutely.
Right, you just can't have one where you want to punish every business, or you look at them like the bad guys. They're not the bad guys.
No. We're providing the tax base for their $9 billion budget, whether they realize that or not. You know, without us, there's no existence. And
Well, the jobs aren't there. Businesses employ people.
But Pat, whether it's a Chinese restaurant, a hardware store, or whatever, we all employ people.
Yep.
If you keep running us out of here, then you have no one living here because there's no jobs for people. They can't stay. So why don't we start taking care of our own?
I tell you, one of the saddest things that I noticed in a report this last year was the demographic that is leaving Rhode Island the most. So we know that Rhode Island is losing population. And the population that we're losing is 25 to 45.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I thought it was seniors, quite
No.
frankly, who were leaving, because everybody says to me, as soon as I retire, I'm out of here. I can't afford to stay. And we actually, I think I saw today, we have the 6th highest cost of living in the country.
Right.
But it's not that demographic. It's the people who are in the most productive years of their lives.
Yeah.
They can't find opportunity here.
Well, let's put it in perspective. They come out of school, they're in debt, most of them have college loans. If they go for their masters or whatever, they're right at that age juncture trying to jump into the job market. Except if you work for the Raimondo administration, there's probably no $200,000 a year job for you. With that being said, and then we create train stations to ship them to Boston. So.
Yeah, we need to use that money to either reduce taxes, reduce regulations, do something to improve our jobs climate.
Absolutely.
Because people wouldn't leave if there were good jobs here for them. There
Correct.
aren't.
Right, and yet we're talking about another train station here in Pawtucket to ship more jobs out of state.
I know.
So what are we gonna be, a bed community? I mean, you know what, we've gotta pay attention here, people. I mean, that little ice cream store or the little milk store can go by the wayside very quickly. You know, I'm a big believer in supporting our own.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in it too, and we're going to talk about it when we get right back.
If you believe you are falsely accused of a crime, I say stand your ground. Prove your case. Call Judge Berman. Daniel E. Doyle Jr. is accused of taking more than $1 million in unauthorized salary increases, bonuses, and personal expenses from a nonprofit institute on the campus of URI. Last week, he threatened a hunger strike. Hell, let's all hunger strike! Are you... So a couple things could have gone wrong there. One, I have absolutely no willpower. And two, it's possible I don't understand the definition of the term hunger strike. Maybe I'll Google it later. But three is probably the biggest reason, and that's because chances are this dude is super guilty. Doyle is the founder and executive director of the Institute for International Sport. Notice I said is, because he currently still is, even though he's accused of embezzlement. Only in Rhody. Should the university fail to provide all the answers to his request for public information that he filed with the university and its board of governors, he will start the fast on June 30th. Maybe so he could carb a load ahead of time. He is demanding justice, people. He won't eat any barbecue on the 4th of July, so you know he means business. Look, Doyle was indicted 3 years ago and pled not guilty to charges that he forged documents and embezzled from his state-supported nonprofit. Doyle contests that the expenses he incurred, like salary increases, bonuses, and personal expenses, were allowed under the agreement he had with URI. This whole investigation started after a 2012 state audit during which the Institute couldn't account for how it spent most of the $575,000 grant money given to construct a building on the URI campus that remained unfinished years later. And by the way, URI is totally willing to hand over the documents he's requesting. He just has to pay $3,960 to cover the cost of paying staff to search, retrieve, and copy the data that he requested. Well played, URI. Well played. So yeah, he's probably guilty. But I don't know, and that's not up for me to decide. But he's probably not doing himself any favors by threatening a hunger strike. Coincidentally, his trial starts in a couple of months. I wonder how it could be delayed if he's hospitalized after a lengthy hunger strike. Are you kidding me?
Welcome back to Common Sense Rhode Island. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and today we're interviewing Mike Collins with the Gaspee Business Network. You're the captain there,
Yes, I am. So the captain is, we have a steering committee.
okay?
And so the steering committee is made up of 8 other business owners that volunteered to be part of this. And when we were on the infancy stages, to give guidance and input.
You actually haven't been in business very long, or when did you launch in?
We launched,
April?
yeah, around April or
Yeah.
so, yeah. And it's been interesting. I have fellows that own concrete companies, I have restaurant owners, I have, a guy that owns a shooting range, another guy that owns a...
Wholesalers,
Wholesale- distributors, yeah,
warehousers,
Right across the board, we have a broad spectrum of...
manufacturing.
Yes, actually we do, furniture manufacturing and display manufacturing. So we have a very diverse business group, and
Big companies, little companies.
you know, it's funny, from small to large, and then I'm starting to find out that I have one guy in my steering committee that, here's another example of holding back employing people because of the Obama law. Okay?
Yeah,
and he's
the
holding-
Obamacare it cost
It cost
has
him
made.
so much money
Yeah,
that it's not worth it for him to put on the, you know, he's got the work.
yeah, I think I've read an awful lot about that, where
Yeah.
people will employ people up to a certain number of hours
Yeah,
and
so
then
he
cut
holds it
them
at
off.
48, yeah.
Yeah,
So
and the
just-
number of employees too.
Just an interesting fact, but all his business is out of state.
Okay,
Yep, and like most of the other gentlemen, their business is out of state, you know.
all right. So you have, so anybody can join, big or little, medium-sized companies?
Absolutely, we keep-
Service, or manufacturing,
Any type of...
and you will be their voice for whatever their issues are.
We have phone numbers, we have a great website, www.gatsby.biz.
All right, well, let me ask you this
Yeah.
first. All right, so somebody wants to join you, what does it cost?
$200,
A year?
yes,
Okay, 200 a year.
yep.
And they get the cute little sticker.
They get your sticker, you get
If they want
you get a
it.
membership, certificate of membership.
Do you release the
No,
names of the members?
Absolutely not. Everybody can be you can be public or you can be anonymous. You just chose us when you sign up. We give you the option right there.
Okay,
And you don't need to be, no one gets access to our list. It's private, no one has rights to our list.
okay, so they can be anonymous if they
Absolutely.
join you.
Absolutely.
All
yeah.
right.
And they still get their voice.
Okay, and what kind of things do they get for their $200?
Well, hey, you get me. No,
Yeah, he's a pretty articulate spokesperson.
All kidding aside, you know, we give them a membership package and everything else like that. The biggest thing is we give them information. You know, we give them what's going on, what we're doing, what we're trying to achieve. We want to hear from them.
Sure.
We're not a closed group. I want that phone to ring. I want people to call up and say, you know, Mr.
This is
Collins,
happening to
Mr.
me."
Collins, I got a problem with this, or Mr. This, I have a problem with this. And so we can go back and look at other members, like members, and say, are you experiencing the same problem? And you know, all of a sudden, maybe there is 8 or 9 of them, all of a sudden, something happening to them that we weren't aware of, that no one else was aware of, something they snuck through.
Sure.
And we can address it.
Yeah.
You know, and...
Oh, yeah, they sneak through
Oh,
things all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, as much as we try to read, I mean, this budget is coming up, and I have sat there on the finance committee all year, listening to the testimony, and yet things have come up in this budget that were never discussed. And now I have to try to figure out what its ramifications are in, like that.
I was just reading on the one on they snuck in Wednesday night or something about the Cape Wind.
Not Cape Wind, it's called Wind Energy
Wind
Development.
energy, okay, one of them, yes.
Development,
Okay.
but yes, it has the potential of raising electricity rates over the next 20 years, I think it is, by $1 billion.
Yeah.
We're a little state, we've just suffered through double-digit electric rate increases over
Correct.
the last few years, and now we have this.
And that was structured to take care of somebody else, private industry's expense, not
It
even
feels
our own.
like it,
Right,
it feels like
right.
it's an insider deal,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we're trying now to get the information and figure out what its ramifications are. I'm going to vote against it, I'm going to try to amend it.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
Because you had mentioned before, electric rates are high in Rhode Island.
Absolutely.
All our energy costs are high, and that hurts small businesses.
Oh, the general cost of doing business here is comparable when you compare it to down south. I want to say it's 20 to 25% just difference in the electric rates.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know that, but I know
Yeah.
we're among the
Yeah,
highest
not to
in
be
the
held to
country.
that number, we are.
That hurts businesses, hurts residents
Oh,
too.
yeah.
It hurts everybody.
Well, and
And
that,
job seekers.
well, that reflects in your cost of goods, and that's the difference of whether you're competitive or not. And once again, here we go again, because our energy costs, and you know, we talk about the lump on the throat. You know, businesses, just because you own a business doesn't mean you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
People operate on pennies.
Yes.
They don't
They work
realize.
really hard.
Really close margins.
Many of them take out personal loans on their homes.
As we say, we sell our soul to the company
You really
store.
do.
We do.
So
We do.
you've got your house and everything that you own on the line for that company.
Absolutely.
A lot of risk there.
Absolutely, make or break it.
And some people have lost all by trying to start a new business.
They have, most businesses fail within 3 to 5 years if they're not counting the pennies. And it's funny because, like I said, with the added cost to start a business here, right down to the small persons, like the restaurant, like I said, and the nail salon, they've all got their share of regulations and permits. I mean, geez, you pull up to a restaurant nowadays, there's the laundry list of licenses they have to have.
Yeah.
Okay? And then, my wife tells me...
And trying to get rid of even this tiniest regulation takes 3 and 4 years.
Oh,
It's incredible.
we get our beach fees reduced by $30, all right? But we're riding in a car that our registration is still tripled.
Yes.
And yet, we have a $127 million surplus of last year's budget that could have been pushed across back to the taxes, to the property taxes of vehicles on the towns for relief, and or taking care of some of these absurd fees.
Yes.
But yet, nothing done again.
No, I know that this is another conversation. We're giving $1.3 billion back in beach fees that we just raised.
Yeah.
We're giving $6.3 billion for an income tax break for retirees. But we're raising the budget by over $250 million.
Right.
Not a very good trade-off. But listen, let's go back to the Gatsby Network.
Sure.
Are you going to have forums for people to
Yes.
come and
Yes.
get information?
We have our first open house, actually, the 23rd of this month at the Radisson in
So
Warwick.
that's a Thursday?
A Thursday, yeah,
Thursday the 23rd.
at 5:30, and that's open to everybody.
Anybody who wants to come and
Anybody
learn?
anybody who wants to come and learn. And you don't necessarily have to be in the business. You know what? We'll accept donations,
From anybody.
From anybody. I mean, everybody who wants to have a voice. People are generally sick of it. And this is where this comes from. This is organic. All right? It's grown right here. It's grown out of what they did. Okay? I hate to say
Well,
there's
the
a cause.
Gatsby was the burning of a ship, no taxation without representation, right?
Many believe the start of the revolution.
Yeah.
Okay? And
That was a good choice. It was a good choice of
It was funny because our memberships are named after the various ships.
Oh, okay.
So the Hannah was the sloop, if a lot of people don't know, that led the Gatsby up onto the sandbar.
okay.
Okay, so that's our top membership, if you want to be in the Hannah.
All right.
And
And their money is all used for advocacy.
Absolutely.
To fight back bad bills like this one dealing with the wind energy, to fight back on bills like the truck tolls, but really to try to change the way we do business up in the State House,
oh,
to
absolutely.
make it more business friendly.
Absolutely. I mean, if the Providence Chamber, if the governor could come out and say, well, the Providence Chamber approves it with 1,000 members,
They don't all approve it, I
they
can
don't
tell
all
you
approve
that.
it. But I'll tell you what, if she says the Gatsby Network approves it, it's approved by its members.
Good housekeeping seal
It
of
could-
approval.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
It seems the brand new and perhaps hastily organized Rhode Island Commerce Corporation is quickly becoming the go-to agency anytime we need a target for sarcasm. Are you kidding me? I kid you not. Last week, a special legislative commission formed to study the $5 million in last year's Commerce Corp budget slated for tourism promotion hit a stone wall. At the commission's session, Commerce Rhode Island CEO Darren Early calmly reported that he couldn't shed any light on that question. He did offer that nearly $4 million of the FY16 budget item was spent, but could only talk about the destinations of all of those dollars in general terms. Rhode Island has a number of regional tourism councils that have been hard at work promoting their sections of the state for years. Naturally, they were very disappointed that there had not been any coordination between them and the Commerce Corp team that gave us Cooler Warmer. Channel 10's Bill Rappley reported that Evan Smith of Discover Newport claimed he hadn't seen one single TV or print ad for Ocean State tourism during the term of the program. And he makes it a point to look. Others in the tourism industry found it hard to justify that the ads published to promote commercial relocations were paid for by tourist promotion dollars. Once again, the newly created Cabinet Department was tongue-tied when it came to explaining its operations to this investigative and oversight commission. Once again, the administration looked bad on TV. The problem sure looked like gross negligence of the task at hand. Of course, it could have been something as simple as the rapid rate of growth of the organization resulting in a lack of organization to provide attention to detail. Or are both those the same thing? Are you kidding me?
Welcome back. I'm Representative Patricia Morgan, and we have with us today Captain Mike Collins. Actually, he's the captain of the Gaspee Business Network. Mike, we've been talking kind of about the hostile business climate here and the fact that the Gaspee Business Network is going to be an advocate for business of any kind, type, and stripe,
Correct.
right? Size.
Yep.
I wonder, what's the most common question you're getting from people who want to find out about you and join?
How are we planning to affect advocacy? How are we planning to communicate with our legislatures, so on and so forth?
So how are you going to make change?
Well, we started off with our little mailers.
All right, some education.
We send out educational flyers. And,
This raised quite a
well, that one's a pro. We send them pro and negative. And,
this raised real hackles up there
I
at the
guess
State House.
yeah,
It
we
really was a shot across the bow of the Gaspee, I guess.
Well, it was. And we refer to, I guess, as dark money. We've been called a lot of things.
So talk about, I don't know that our viewers can see this postcard. This was one in favor of a representative.
Absolutely.
Dan Riley.
Who did a great job. He voted against tolls and everything else like that. And we felt that Dan's district needed to know of what a great job he's been doing at the State House in regards to business advocacy, no tolls, so on and so forth.
So this was just to tell them how he has voted on different hot issues.
Absolutely.
But you're not telling them to vote for him at all.
Not at all.
No, you just want them to know.
It's strictly education.
You know, honestly, I think that's important. I think people are not aware at all of the things that we're passing up in the State
Right.
House most of the time. It's been difficult at best to find out what we're voting for.
Well, with
People
the-
have no idea.
Well, you're correct. And with well as positive going out, there's also negative that going out.
Oh,
And
you're doing negatives
we-
too.
we
Is that
also
where
do-
the hackles went up?
Yeah, it
The alarm bells?
upset some people, but you know, like they say, the truth does hurt at times. And oh yeah, it raised all sorts of questions. But let me rest assured, there is no dark money. That money came from the good people, the taxpayers of the state of Rhode Island, for that advocacy. Okay, and through the Gaspee.
And not necessarily all business money, right?
Not
It can
necessarily.
be anybody who wants to join and
Absolutely.
say, you know, my children are leaving Rhode Island to get jobs elsewhere. I want to change things that happen in the state. Help me.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it was funny because there was a certain rep that had an open forum of referring to us as dark money. Then he had a phone call for him, and I called in to try to speak on it.
Who was that?
McNamara.
Oh, he's the state Democrat chairman.
Oh,
too.
absolutely. And, well, he's called us dark money and so on. And I was listening to people on his,
I know, he used every kind of cliche
Yeah.
attack against you that he could possibly.
well,
pull
we
out.
kind of got a chuckle out of it because, you know, it was funny because all that mattered, Pat, was that people really knew the truth, and he made himself look bad but by making accusations that were totally unfounded.
But you didn't say anything that was untruthful.
No, nothing in there
A
was
postcard went into his district telling
Absolutely.
people how he's been voting, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And again, maybe he didn't want the people to know.
Well, you know what's funny, and not to get sidetracked just for a minute, but when I spent my time up at the State House, and the day of the Senate hearing, when it came down to brass tacks of them voting on roadworks, I asked a certain rep from Pawtucket if he ever read roadworks at 402 pages, and he looked at me and told me no.
Yeah.
And I said, how dare you have the right to decide the fate of my business when you have no idea what you're voting on?
Well, but they do vote.
And that's what is.
And so you just report out on what they vote. You
Absolutely.
Just, right? Just letting people know, this is your representative, this is how he voted. They can agree or disagree with the votes.
You know, there are some hardworking people like yourself up there that actually generally have the people's concern in the state of Rhode Island. And then there's the other side of it, that's such the old boys network. They don't even read it. It's, would you pass that for me? You know, and I witnessed that, and it's like, whoa, stop here. You don't even know what's in it. It doesn't matter, because when you need yours done, that's how they do it. They take care
Well,
of you.
it is a little bit, I mean, I've been asked, why did you vote against my bill? Well, because I didn't think it was a good bill for my people, my
Absolutely.
constituents for the state of Rhode Island. I thought there were things that would harm them in it.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't vote for it. But you get buttonholed and pressured to vote for things that aren't good.
And
You need to be stronger.
And maybe with our strength, and with the strength of finally businesses getting up there, there's 27,000 businesses in the state of Rhode Island, from landscapers to whatever else like that. My ultimate goal here is 5,000 businesses, okay? 20%, okay? If you combine the chambers, that's what we'd have. And boy, what a voice we'd have. Look
Yeah.
at the power we'd have. You think they'd pay attention to us then when we represent 5,000 businesses plus their employees? Damn straight they will. Yeah?
Yeah, I think they would. But even more, if you can send out notices or postcards or something, just getting information into the hands of voters. This is how your representative is voting. Do you think that's in your best interest?
You know,
Right?
that-
They've gotten away with, I think, passing things that are bad for Rhode Island because not a lot of people knew what was happening inside that building.
Well-
And this kind of stuff lets people know. They can agree or disagree. Maybe they were in favor of the tolls, right?
Right,
And
but
they're
it-
going to say, well, he should have voted for the tolls. We thought it was good.
Right.
But they should know.
well, that's the whole thing. It's the disconnect, and they love to leave people in the dark. And you know, what do they say? An educated consumer is a dangerous consumer, right? Well, an educated voter is a dangerous voter, right? Because they're going to vote for what they want, right?
Well,
Yeah.
no, that's not what I think. I think an educated voter is a good voter.
Well, I mean, I meant that in a
Right,
good way. I
because-
mean, not,
They should, whatever we do in that building affects everybody's lives, affects everybody's
Absolutely.
lives. And they should know, oh, well, that hurt me. Or conversely, yeah, that was a good bill. I think I like that. They should have that knowledge, that information, and that's all you're giving them with these postcards,
and I
right?
think at some point, when we get our status in numbers, and if there is surplus of funds, you know, this might be simple as hiring somebody to sit at that State House every day and report back to us of what's going through, and look at the bills, and that we'll put out in our newsletter and our informational packets that go out to our members and say, here's what's going on, here's how things got voted on, and make people culpable of what their actions are.
Yeah, and also call to action.
That's-
So
yeah.
something like the toll bill, that was a big, very impactful piece of legislation that I think will hurt Rhode Island.
Oh,
all
drastic.
Rhode Islanders. And it's that call to action. People sometimes will sit at home and say, oh, but I'm just a little person. I can't stop anything. I'm just
Yes,
me
you
by
can.
myself. You allow them to join a network. So it's not just them by themselves, but you also tell them what to do. Call, write, email. You help them to email.
Well,
you help them to make those connections.
We'll help them right across the board. I mean, and listen, we're not anti-union or anything else like that, but to use the unions, for example, okay, that's how they do it,
Yep.
okay? And, you know, whether it's a rep up there they have, or a senator, or whatever it may be, okay, their strength is in their numbers.
The strength is in the numbers.
Right.
And that's what Mr. Collins and the Gatsby Business Network needs. They need numbers, they need your support. And again, it can be any business in Rhode Island, it can be any individual who wants to see change.
Absolutely.
They are an educational organization, and we'll do also political advocacy. We need their voice in Rhode Island, because there's just not enough voice for the business community up there. And as a result, we've seen businesses leave, we've seen jobs leave, we've seen our children leave. So I want to really thank you for
Thank
putting the
you.
business network together. How do people get in touch with you?
On the web, www.gaspee.biz, gaspee.biz, and there's a ton of information up there. You can read. It's all about memberships. We have a lot of informational stuff going on. We have things on there about our open house, once again, on the 23rd at the Radisson in Warwick at 5:30. All are invited. I encourage everyone to attend.
Yep, and I encourage you too. So Gatsby.biz, and come out to the Sheridan on the 23rd.
No, the Radisson.
Radisson, whoops, Radisson on the
That's okay.
23rd.
Thank you.
Every once in a while, I get intrigued with gender issues. This week, I read articles about the great divide between what men earn and what the ladies earn. Then I read how the Navy and the Marine Corps will be changing the names of many of the job titles that have been in use for decades. Jobs like yeoman might become administrative specialist. Seems there are 24 titles in the Navy that end in man, and roughly 12 titles in the Marine Corps. So, now that women can do almost anything the men have done in uniform, it's time to get with the program. I guess we can do all of that name changing without harming anything substantial. Not so far back, we changed messmen to culinary specialists. When I entered the service in 1967, most of the messmen were Philippine nationals on their way to U.S. citizenship. Well, what about pay? Pretty straightforward in the military, as pay is based on pay grade, all equal. Not so in the civilian world. We are all aware of the pay inequality that continues to exist in our workplaces. Now, I found a chart that compares income by age. It lists the median incomes. To be clear, the median in the math world represents the value in a frequency distribution above and below which values with equal total frequencies appear. Got that? So the chart says that men 25 to 35 had a median income of $36,097. Women, $26,261. The 34 to 44 males made $46,573 versus $31,070 for the ladies. The 55 to 64 group dropped to $43,280 for the guys and $26,848 for the women. So the disparity went 37% difference at 25 to 50% difference when 35 to 64% difference at 45. Worse yet, at 65 plus, it is 80% different. Not good, my friends. So how did we get to this point and what should be done? Well, that one is a college course in itself, but we do know that lots of good folks are working on this issue. Just search the internet for pay inequality and snuggle in for the winner. Now, I wondered how far back in U.S. history you have to go to find the first references to gender pay inequality. Now, I spend some of my volunteer time at Prescott Farm. This is the period farm owned by the Newport Restoration Foundation that is on the border between Portsmouth and Middletown. The NRF moved colonial buildings onto the site and asked the URI Master Gardeners, I'm one of those, to design kitchen gardens to represent what was grown in the 1700s on Aquidneck Island. So I have studied much about what life was like on the farm in Rhode Island way back when. Back then, the farm was owned and operated by a married couple. The men and women had roughly equal workloads based on tradition. The women worked inside, men outside. The women tended the house and the gardens, the men got the barns and the fields. The gals and the kids, all 7 to 9 of them, milked the cows and fed the chickens. The guys tended to the oxen and the horses. The women cooked, sewed, washed, and mended. Men plowed, chopped, repaired, and hunted. Seems the workload got spread out equally. No pay issues, as just enough was harvested to sustain the family with a little left over to sell in the neighborhood. So the garden was super important. Now, it could be as large as an acre, and after the dad plowed it up, the ladies planted, weeded, and stored for the winter months. Now, these farms required more labor than a husband or wife could give, so they needed kids. Got them all started on chores as soon as they could walk. The family farm was very important to keep the family fed, but it wasn't an easy way to make a living. Too many rocks and shallow, fertile soil in New England. The early colonists built ships, went whaling, fished, and became blacksmiths. These are guy things. The gals had to do the chores and the cooking. Oh, the good old days. Nowadays, we have moved on and we get all we need to eat from the grocery store. We now have occupations that both men and women can do with ease. Thoughtful people realize that men are generally built differently than women and can muscle their way into occupations demanding brute strength. And so it should be. But the productive advances that have been created by putting women into the workforce demand that the pay should be equal when doing the same work. Come on, guys, get off the farm and into the brave new world. Thanks for watching, and God bless.